Yo, just a disclaimer. This podcast is meant for informational purposes only. We are not financial advisors, so please do your own research.
What's up? I'm Vernon, got AJ, and we're going deep. Man, we're a few episodes into this thing, and we have conquered the podcast world. Not really, but we're working on it. So let's start off with some sports. And one of our main guys, Aidan Hutchinson, and his musical debut.
Yeah, I mean, first off, just so excited for Hard Knocks to be back. You know, as somebody that loves football, works in football, great show, give me that behind the scenes look. And then, yeah, I think it's pretty easy to say that our guy Aidan stole the show on episode 1. Just how electric that meeting room got, right? Like, I don't know if you saw this. A dude took off his shirt, threw it, and then another dude in mid stride while dancing grabbed it and then started waving it was going nuts. Like, yes. I think Aidan killed it.
Yeah. I think our viewers need to see that. So let's roll that clip. So one of the things that makes me really laugh about this is just seeing black folks go crazy with a white man singing Billie Jean. Like, it is hilarious. Like they've never heard the song before. Oh, the dichotomy of it. Like I like Hard Knocks in the fact that it brings you into that room and you get to see something that only those guys ever get to be a part of. And that's special.
No, 100%. I think what's cool about it too is, like, you know, obviously because we rep Aidan, I'm all up in Twitter search, seeing the sentiment, seeing the tweets, just seeing people. And then, you know, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok, that clip was pumping and still pumping. And you're seeing the comments. And what's cool about it, I think, for Aidan, the Lions organization, that team, they were just so damn likable in that moment, right? You just got a bunch of grown-ass men rocking out. And, you know, the rookies singing is like a time-honored tradition. And the fact that they were just all vibing. And, you know, listen, Aidan, and I texted with his mom, Aidan's a talented kid. He plays unbelievable football. He's got a little bit of rhythm. He could sing a little bit, but it's not like he's the greatest singer of all time. But I just think that that locker room saw that he was like committed to it and was just vibing, and they wanted to vibe with him. And I mean, I saw thousands of comments of people just being like, I'm a Lions fan now. I hope that team does well. Like, I'm rooting for that team. So it was really cool just to see, like, Aidan, our client, be at the center of something that just, like, united an entire organization. And then I think united football fans, like, no matter what type of fan you are, you're rocking out with that clip. It's just, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think even for him, in not even knowing Aidan, haven't met him yet, haven't been around that team, to have a team, and I saw so many veteran faces in that clip that thoroughly enjoyed what they were watching and being a part of. It kind of speaks a little bit, in my opinion, to who Aidan is and how he's conducted himself amongst his peers and amongst some guys that have blazed the trail for what he's about to do and embark on life. So that to me speaks a little deeper into he's a good kid, and he's handled himself the right way amongst some stars.
A really good call out, because, like, you know, I haven't spent an enormous amount of time with Aidan. You know, for those listening, his agents, Mike and Jamie, only joined us back in April. So it's not as if we represented Aidan when he was at Michigan or even throughout the entire draft process. Only got to meet him and his family in April. But, you know, from my time with him and my time with his family, like, he's definitely got, like, from a likability factor, he's an 11 out of 10. But then, to your point, I'm glad you brought this up, because I had the same sense. I just didn't communicate it. So I'm really glad you brought it to light. You know, interesting dynamic that is underrated in that clip is when Aidan goes up there, his opening statements, like, I'm Aidan Hutchinson. My signing bonus was 20-something million. And, like, I don't know, he's got a very special, like, humility to him. And you even heard when he said that, like, that was said in a manner where it was so well received. People were like, yeah, man, you deserve that money. Like, you, to your point, you know, they already had OTAs and mini camp leading into training camp. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I got that same sense. It's a little bit of insight, you know, you being a professional athlete that was a young star, but then also a vet. I think you're absolutely right. I think whatever Aidan's done since coming to Detroit up until that moment also lent to the electricity of that room.
No doubt.
So, okay, how about this? Pivoting, let's stay sports. I know the script had us going NFTs, but let's stay sports. There was a Pirates player who had a cell phone pop out of his pocket while sliding into second or third base. Wild, awesome. Made me immediately think of like Joe Horn, the NFL wide receiver, hiding the phone in the pylon after a touchdown. You know, I think football and basketball have a little bit more shenanigans than baseball does, but like, you know, you played for a long time. You had to see something fun. Like, give us something that even comes close. I don't know if you have anything as wild as that, but give me something fun from your playing days that everybody can have a laugh at.
Oh yeah, wild. Oh yeah, I got that beat.
You got a beat.
As far as I got that beat. As far as cell phones and pockets, it's random. Like I don't think I've like. If a guy's not playing, I get it. But if you're playing, like running around with a phone in your back pocket, it's something's not right. So what if you slide on your butt? Like what happens then? You've broken your phone. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe he had some important something he needed to be abreast of immediately. I don't know. But whatever. To each his own. As far as I've seen guys get ready for a game by drinking. Whether it be beer, whether it be shots of Crown, I've seen it happen, and I've seen guys produce in those circumstances. So let's say it's one shot before the game. They go out and get a hit. Boom. Another shot after the first at bat. Next at bat hit a double, 2 shots. And it's like at some point you're going to be trying to hit the one in the middle. Like, and I've seen guys do it 3 and 4 times. I'm like, they're awesome. Like that's a next level baseball player right there. That goes back to the old school days of guys just drinking, smoking a cigarette and going to play the game. So yes, it happens or has happened. I'm not going to say it still happens. Don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but yes, that is part of the game.
So do you think they did that to kind of like, so for example, it's no secret I'm an avid, passionate golfer. I saw a chart once that is hilarious to me. And I've tried proving the hypothesis out with mixed results, but there's something that says that like you've got your baseline as a golfer. And then when you're 1 beer in, you're slightly like microscopically better because maybe your muscles loosen a little bit and you're not overthinking while you're standing over the ball. Then it shows your second beer is actually your peak performance. So if you have 2 beers at the start of your round going into 18 holes, it's actually your peak. You're actually better 2 beers in than you are at a baseline no beers. But then when you have your 3rd beer, you're slightly worse. And then it's just a funny chart. Your 4th beer, your 5th beer, your 6th beer, you're just crashing and you're way worse than if you had none. Do you think there's some element maybe for some guys that are maybe a little bit nervous or like build up their own, like, do you think there's like taking the edge off looseness factor that maybe actually work for some people?
Well, first off, I think I'm starting to realize I did my career all wrong. I don't drink beer, and apparently I should have. Maybe that would have helped some things here and there. I was never the person that was like overly hyped or overly nervous about situations, so maybe it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, you probably didn't need it.
But I get it. I get some, and playing with guys who are just tense and or overthinkers or whatever it may be. Yeah, they probably needed that and some Valium. Like there's some guys that needed some serious medicine to bring them down. So yeah, I get it.
Makes sense. Let's pivot for a second. Let's talk about the market. You know, I'm not going to lie, $1,900 ETH, $1,900 US ETH. I like getting to this point. I think 2000 is a nice magic number from a psychological perspective. I hope we can keep trending and get to 2000 sometime in the next week or 2 or 3. But what I like about it the most is that I feel like it's been a fairly steady rise. It hasn't been a yo-yo. It hasn't been a severe up and down. I feel like the market has just been going, and I don't know. I'm seeing OpenSea just had its highest volume NFT day in 2 months. And I don't think, as I looked at it, it wasn't like there was a massive drop by Bored Ape or somebody else to cause the spike. I think it was just a nice, steady, good day. And so I don't want to overpromise. I don't want to speculate and say greater things to come or here comes the bull. But I think taking our time as an industry and as a market and having this steady climb is just damn nice to see. So I'm curious what you're feeling, what you're thinking.
What do you think with obviously where things got to a few months ago and everything seemed to be pointing like it's never going to stop, to taking the dip that it took and people realizing, okay, this needs to be a steady build to something that's sustainable, which you talk about just it going up incrementally, and not having these spikes. I think it helps. I think it helps the overall market. I think it helps people getting into it to kind of see, okay, it's taken a hit. There's been some volatility, which there is in any type of investment that's out there, from the stock market to crypto. But to see something bounce back, and it's been a few months, like it's not something that's taken years. But you don't see that spike of it going back up either. So I think I like that side of it. I think more people can relate to that side of it and be more comfortable living in that space, and not have as much of a fear factor. I think people lost their minds, obviously, for for a little while, but the people that stuck to it, now can reap the benefits and the fruits of that.
Yeah, I mean, that was my thing, right? Like, you can check the blockchain. I got hammered in these last 3 or 4 months in terms of my own personal collection, but I kind of just kept a steady head because I was just so bullish on the macro. And I think if you look at the history of crypto and you look at NFTs and if you look at disruptive technology in general, you're going to have your ebbs and flows. And yes, it was painful going from like 3,500 to 950. That was painful. And to your point, even this like nice steady increase, believe it or not, I actually want it to even be steadier and slower, because we've doubled in the last 2 months or 6 weeks or whatever. And that's if we keep that trajectory. I know everybody wants to be back at 4,000, but if we get back to 4,000 like in mid-September, I think we're just going to repeat the same mistakes, right? And so it's not good. I'm not happy that people lost money. It's not good. But, there was a point in time where anybody could spin up any project with a picture and raise $1 million on a mint, and that's not good. A lot of those companies that did that came and went. I like to think that we're doing something different with Vayner Sports Pass, building steady, building for the big picture. And so I'm hesitant. I think, I'd like to get to 2,000 here in the next 30 days. I'd like to hang out in the low 2,000s for a while, and then I want to hang in the mid 2,000s and then the high 2,000s. And then, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need us to be at 3,500 or 4,000 come Halloween. I actually think that if we're at that, there's a chance that we just go right back down and there could be pain. So it's been interesting to watch. I am happy. Listen, I will say I'm much happier that we've doubled than if we halved. I'd be much more upset if we were at 450. I'd be concerned if we were at 450 instead of 1,900, but that's kind of what I'm feeling. And then before we jump in, exactly. Before we jump in and bring on our guest, Amber, let's talk VSP real quick. I think it's been a really productive week for Vayner Sports Pass. We have an ambitious project coming out here in the very near future with the Black Card. For those listening that haven't heard, Black Card's a deflationary event, as opposed to an initial sale where we could have just sold the 70 Black Cards for ETH. We're making it a drip auction where Black Cards 1 through 70 are ranked in strength, 1 being the strongest, 70 being the weakest of the 70. And the way you bid and the way you pay for a Black Card is via bidding and using VSPs themselves. So we're anticipating a lot of Vayner Sports Passes to be burned in this event. It'll bring our overall supply down quite a bit. I think at least 1,000, if not more. And I'm just excited. I think it's important for us to nail it from a tech perspective, and we're in close communication. We're closely with our dev team to make everything smooth from a user experience, a smart contract perspective. But we've been rolling out info. So I think last week we rolled out the point system so that you understand how many points each and every Vayner Sports Pass is worth in the bid. And then this week we rolled out a chart that just helps you to understand the overall ecosystem. So on this chart, and there's a video in our Discord you can watch. It's 7 minutes long, but I think it's worth it, where we're comparing Black Card to Hollow, to Wild Card, to bases, to greens, to other spectaculars. And you get to see just all the different categories of the Vayner Sports Pass experience and how everything stacks up. So sentiment's been great. I'm not going to lie. I was pleasantly surprised by the overall reaction to the chart. It's tough to please everybody, but I think our community has seen the effort that we put in, the planning that's gone into it. And I'm hyped. I'm hyped to drop this thing later this month. So that's what's on my mind.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Just to further your point as far as response and reception to the Vayner Sports Pass, and what you and the team have built and are building, people love it. People are recognizing it. The time and effort that's being put into it. I think that's what I love to see, just the community coming together and rallying around a project and seeing just the time and the effort that you're putting into it and the team's putting into it, and it's putting out a great product. So
I
well done.
appreciate that, man. So last thing before we go into bring on Amber, a little bit of alpha, if you're listening, around the Black Card is that, on that chart, you see the airdrops, the partner mints and things like that. Let's just say that the airdrop component in general for Vayner Sports Pass and and I would say, here's the alpha. We're a sports NFT project. I think we've done a really excellent job of leaning into the sports aspect of our project these first 4 months. I think we're going to lean even more into the NFT side of things. So I think more raffles around NFTs like we've done for 8-Bit and Akutars. And then I think the airdrop component for Black Card, Holo, and some others, I think you're going to see some really fun stuff in the short future. Next few weeks, we're going to be bringing it. So I'm excited. Keep your eyes open and your ears peeled for us diving in just deeper on the NFT side. And I think Black Card's a launching off point for it, but you'll see it in raffle tech and things of that nature too. So I'm hyped. I hope if you're listening, you're hyped too. Let's pivot. I'm excited to bring my friend Amber on. So let's grab Amber. Amber, what's up? Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
How you doing? Everything good?
Good, doing well. How about you?
All good over here. For those that don't know, Amber and I have been friends for probably about a decade now, right?
Almost, yeah. Dave and I have been together for 8 years.
You've been together with Dave for 8 years. So yeah. Dave, who she's referencing, all three of us worked together at VaynerMedia back in the day. Yeah. And then dating back even further, Dave and I went to high school together. And so Dave and Amber met at Vayner, have been, dated for a long time, are now married. So pretty awesome connection here. And so it's always fun when one of the best artists in the NFT space and best artists in general also happens to be a personal friend. So no brainer for Amber to join us. Excited to dive in. I guess, Amber, maybe why don't we just start with your art style? We get to see some of it here in your background. Why don't you just kind of walk everybody through? Yeah. Why don't you just walk everybody through just kind of your approach, your style, what your art means to you?
Yeah. So my work has definitely evolved over the last several years. I think not too dissimilar to abstract artists of art histories past. I started off doing a lot of figurative work and representations of the female form. And the reason why I started there is because I struggled to see myself represented in fine art and in media. So I feel like a lot of the depictions of womanhood were very specific, and I couldn't see myself in any of them. So I began there. And as time went on, I evolved as an artist, and the concepts I wanted to kind of reach in my work lived beyond the figure. So with time, my work became much more abstract and kind of lost the figure in its process, which has been really exciting. Regardless of when I did figurative work and now my more abstracted work, all of it's very colorful and very bold and very simple in shape. That definitely pulls from my graphic design background and printmaking background. Being able to tell stories and create narratives through really simple shapes and forms has been something that's always excited me as an artist. So that is the long short of it.
So Amber, obviously your art is unique, and I kind of gravitated to it, with the people we have on the show and just doing some history and just trying to study up on the artist as much as possible. I love your art. I love the style of it. I love just the imagination that goes behind it. My dad's a sports artist, so it's a little different, but I understand the mind of an artist. So sometimes they're a little different. I get it. And I like that part of it. But as an artist, when and what brought you to the NFT space and Web3?
I would actually probably say AJ inadvertently. So I think AJ told Dave about CryptoPunks. And predating that, I knew about CryptoKitties. I didn't know that those were NFTs. I just remember finding out about them and thinking oh, that'll be cool when artists can do that with their own work. And then I forgot about it. And then February of 2021, Dave came to me and he was like, hey, AJ has these CryptoPunk things. And he explained NFTs to me. He's like, that's awesome. Let's buy a bunch. And he's like, woo, we could probably buy one. And I was like, that's stupid. So I did. I was like, give me the weekend to Dior. And so like I went and like researched a little bit more about CryptoPunks, about NFTs, and I was like, this is awesome again. It's going to change the future of how artists live, how anything that requires like a receipt or like transaction that needs to be transparent. I was like, this is going to change so many things. So we bought a CryptoPunk and we still have it, which is nice. We're never going to sell it, so that's that. But since then, I started to mint some work on Maker's Place. AJ actually bought my first piece, which was really exciting for me.
That's awesome.
And then after Maker's Place was, you know, kind of expensive to mint at the time, you know, as a freelancer, we were in the pandemic. So I paused it a little bit and kind of studied how other artists were behaving in relationship to NFTs. And after doing some more research, I found OpenSea and lazy minting, which was much more affordable for me to be able to do at the time. So about a year ago, I started to kind of like throw it all on there and start to mint different collections and play around. And I'm so grateful that it's been received the way it has been. So yeah, that's how I started.
Amber, full disclosure for everybody listening, I'm a large Amber holder. As she referenced, I bought her Genesis piece and own a bunch of the rest of it. I remember back to our combos in that February timeframe as like you guys went from buying the punk to you thinking about bringing your art to life on the blockchain. I remember one of the things that we talked about briefly was, you know, initially you were working through what it meant to take your physical style and bring it to life digitally. I remember that was kind of like a bit of a hurdle at first, right? To get over that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience and the difference between physical? Because I also in my dining room have one of your early physical pieces hanging up. So it's like, talk about that transition from going to digital physical or physical to digital and like your experience as an artist. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was another hurdle that I experienced, not only minting price in February, but also like trying to figure out how to make a one of one that was digital from something that was physical. And I couldn't quite get it right. Some folks were like, oh, I'll just buy your physical stuff, which is cool. I think we've all evolved since then. But so another part of my learning between like February, March, and August when I started to share my work was that majority of the work that was more well received was digital work. And prior to selling NFTs, I would usually do digital work for clients. It's just easier to print on objects, on apparel, out-of-home ads. It allows them a lot more flexibility with the artwork itself. And then I would keep my personal work to something more physical, and that was a really nice balance. So it took me a little bit to realize that I could do digital work as fine art as well, not just client work. And that kind of gave me an easier entry into the space. Folks understood that it was a one of one, it was just digital, it was much more clean than trying to figure out, you know, where do I ship a physical piece to? Some folks weren't really comfortable sharing their mailing address, rightfully so. So then I started digital. And then as I learned more in the space, like trial by error, I realized that I wanted to bring my physical paintings back into it somehow. So over the course of a few months later into last year, the end of 2021, I started to play around with the idea of editions. And I remember I asked some folks in my Discord, I was like, would you be interested in editions? And they're like, no, we want one of ones. And I was like, you're not ready, but you will be soon. So I wanted to really, I think there's a lot of parallels between NFTs and an artist selling their work as NFTs and printmaking. So the idea of the print and like the printing press, when it was introduced, allowed a lot more access for everyday folks to collect art. So it wouldn't necessarily be a painting or one of one in this case. It would be an edition, whether that's an open edition, an unlimited edition, or a limited edition. And so I wanted to take that kind of thinking and mechanics and apply it to my NFTs. And I know I'm not the first one to have done that, but I thought that it was really interesting to allow more access and affordability to my work through editions. And it also allows me to mint a physical piece that I'll hold on to and I'll keep, and then have that live as an edition digitally. That also made a lot more sense. So I navigated back into that. And now I do sell, like, I call them two of ones, where it's a one of one NFT and a physical. Usually those are by commission when someone reaches out to me and they're like, hey, I want a physical piece and an NFT. How do we do this? So it's been a slow evolution, and I'm kind of excited to see like what new hurdles will kind of come about for artists and how we'll be able to innovate around them.
All right. So Amber, as a former Vayner family member, I need you to take us inside so our viewers and listeners can get more of a real life example of AJ and Gary, like something they wouldn't know, like just I like to embarrass people. This wasn't on the
script. I don't see.
On the script. But now that we have friends and family on the show, like I need something embarrassing.
Fair game.
Yes.
I can't think of anything embarrassing. I think the first thing that comes to mind that I thought was, odd, but in a good way at the time was, so like my first job out of college as a graphic designer, web designer at Victoria's Secret, and definitely like a small cog in a very large wheel. And like you wouldn't really meet leadership. Half of their leadership I think was in Ohio too, so like New York was very small. So when I started at Vayner, I feel like I met AJ and Gary within like the first few weeks, and I was like, this is bizarre. I was like, why do I'm the graphic designer meeting like the people that own this company? So I thought that was actually really cool. And obviously Vayner's a lot bigger now and everyone's home, so I don't know how that operates in terms of like people meeting leadership. I see Dave on Zoom like all hours of the day, so I'm assuming that's how it happens now. But the point of my story is that I thought that is really refreshing, that it didn't feel as like hierarchical as many other companies that my friends worked at, and the one company I worked at before and then before I went freelance. It just felt really nice to feel like seen, even though you were just entry level. So that was something that was really cool. Not embarrassing though. I guess more embarrassing for me, where I was like, well, what the fuck? Why do I have a meeting with Gary? Am I already fired? Like that's what I thought. Like into it, I was like, okay, it was really nice.
So that's a very flattering answer, and I appreciate it. But let's give Vernon what he was really looking for. Let's omit client names. Like let's not, we can always. This is pre-recorded, so if Amber says anything crazy, we'll edit it out anyway. What's a Vayner story? It doesn't have to be Gary.
Okay, about you. Okay, cool.
It doesn't even have to be about me, but maybe like your experience at Vayner, because Vayner. How many employees were there when you started?
Like 300.
Yeah, so for context, I think it's like 2,000 now, right? So 300 was still pretty intimate, and I appreciate you saying what you said, because I do think we did a really nice job of like making 300 feel intimate in a world where 300's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
But also like 300 people, probably 250 were in their early to mid 20s. Like Vayner had some fun and wild times, and we were doing big work and we were blazing a trail on social media. Like, can you think of like an instance where, because I can think of like a war room where it was like, hey, this client needs this out by this, and we're all going to jam for 30. Like there was some chaos. There was some craziness. Can you think of like a crazy, funny story? And again, you can leave out client names. You can leave out staff names.
Yeah. So I would say the funnest part, which like I only think I could have handled in my early 20s, because like now thinking about it now, I'm like, that's just exhausting. A lot of our photo shoots were shot in a small closet.
Yes.
And it was, I love the photography team and like the designers that I worked with. And I like still brag about this on now that when people photograph, it doesn't happen often, when people photograph me when I do collaborations with brands, they're like, wow, you're so good at hand modeling. And I was like, yeah, because we couldn't afford hand models or models to do
or space or equipment.
So we just like did it ourselves. And so like if you look back, I
that's a great
shout out brands, but like I am a prominent hand model. My hands looked a lot younger, 10 years ago than they do now, but like that
it's so true.
All do everything, and we do it really fast, and
it was the creative.
It's a vibe.
Yeah, the creative when Amber was there in the beginning was very bootstrap is the nicest way I can put it. Yeah. We were in a place where social media as an industry wasn't so mature. Nope. And thus the brands weren't investing at a level where you would hire. Like now Vayner, I think Vayner did 3 Super Bowl commercials last year, right?
So and you have like a proper studio now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like Vernon and the listeners, I remember vividly the decision to like turn a storage closet into our first photo studio in the back right corner of 315. Yeah. It was literally a closet that was as narrow as the 2 columns on your shoulders, Vern. And then like we probably bought like some light for $120 off Amazon. Yep. And Amber was the hand model and somebody else was the voiceover.
Yep.
And we made the content for dirt cheap, and we would post it on Twitter and Facebook, and it did really well. And it just, you get what you pay for kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And then it obviously evolved, and some of our social media work turned into national TV campaign work. So it obviously we elevated and got better, but
That's
early
after
days.
I left. Like I hear now, like I'm like, oh, that's a cool campaign, and Dave was like, that was Vayner, and I was like,
Yeah.
dope. Like it's really cool to see. But I do think the valuable lesson of having done that is that now, especially the NFT space, I feel like is new. I mean, I was probably a little later to social media than where we are currently with NFTs, but I see a lot of these projects try to go so big so quickly and then like eat through their budget and then struggle. And I think or even artists too, where they like blow up and then they like hire a huge team and they've never done that and they just like dive nose first, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the idea of being scrappy is something that I love now. I mean, my own practice is just me and then like Dave for emotional support. But to be able to be scrappy, I didn't learn that anywhere else other than Vayner. So like I'm very thankful for those experiences, and they're pretty funny. And I have hand modeling skills if this all goes south. So I've got a backup plan.
Yeah. Well, Amber, thank you for being such a good friend to AJ and Gary and not putting them on blast in front of people. But I think it speaks to, and it probably really speaks to our viewers and listeners, that where things can start and where they can get to. I think what people see now when it comes to Vayner is just this massive media company, an agency, and the different roles that the Vayner family plays. But it started somewhere, and it took bootstrapping. It took some hard work to get to where they're at. So hopefully it encourages the people that are listening that it has to start somewhere and it can become something major.
Time.
If you're willing to put the time and work in. So you talked about on the NFT space, who are some of the artists and projects that you love right now?
Oh, there are so many of them. Project wise, off the top of my head, I would say one of my favorites is Women in Weapons. I've been really fortunate that that Gary put Sarah's work on his Twitter, because I probably wouldn't have found it otherwise. But then also to be able to have met both Sarah and Jake and become friends with them. I think that's been the really exciting thing, to see how they've grown and like how, I do think that they, are very scrappy and they're very smart with how they operate. So I'm excited to see where they grow in the next several decades. Artist wise, I am now blanking, of course. But Leslie Granger is a painter. She lives in SoCal. Her work is beautiful. And I have a few physical pieces. They're over there. I'm not going to go get them. But her work is really amazing. And when Dave and I moved to California, I want to buy a big piece from her. So she's definitely one. I'd say one that's a bit more well-known is Jen Stark. I was lucky to meet her when I was in LA this winter. She is awesome. I didn't know of her work until the NFT space, and then like diving back, you're like, oh yeah, she's pretty well known. And when I met her, it's like, you're the one that has the mural in Culver City, and I couldn't figure out who you were like years ago. And she's like, yes, that's me. So it's kind of nice that NFTs help me come out from under the rock that I live in. But those are two of my favorites.
Nice. Amber, what about on the business side, right? You're an artist. You started your career kind of, in the corporate side of working for brands or behalf of brands, and then, pivoted your success in that arena to do work for yourself and be an independent artist. Then, you've had such great success in the NFT space. And I think inevitably that has also now turned you into, and correct me if I'm wrong, but now you're, whatever the percentage are, 90% artist, 95% artist, 5%, 10% businesswoman. How have you handled, I guess the economic aspect of your art flourishing, and the fact that like, I think the blockchain, and I've seen you tweet about this and I've experienced it myself, right? Where prior to the blockchain, every artist or every businessman or businesswoman, when they were building, they were kind of building in private for the most part, unless they became a publicly traded company. Yeah. But the blockchain makes it where, every move that you make, every tweet that you write, every piece of art that you create, there's a sentiment in the ecosystem as collectors and as holders that you or the project is a business. And while they may not be an investor from the traditional sense of an equity perspective, they're invested in the success of your work. Like, how has that experience been for you? How do you balance that? Do you balance that? Do you outsource that? Like, how does that look for you?
That's a great question. So the business aspect, my dad's an accountant. So in terms of like keeping track of like income and things like that, that's been pretty streamlined. I've since hired another accountant because when I started selling NFTs, my dad was like, this is out of my depths. And then like he pointed me to a friend to help. So that's been helpful. So in terms of like taxes and things like that I hired out because I used to do them all myself. But in this last year, fortunate, good problems, it was like a lot. So that's been helpful. In terms of your second part of your question with the balance of collectors viewing themselves as investors and kind of speculation and things like that on artwork, I try to set super clear boundaries. I think anything that is good takes time to build. And this space, because it is so fast moving, I do think there's a level of impatience. So long time to people might mean months when it should really mean decades. And I get that and I empathize with that. I'm a very impatient person, so I understand where it comes from. But just trying to educate and, answer people with kindness, like, hey, I appreciate you collecting my art, but if you're going to do that in hopes of flipping in the next few months, like that's very risky. And like, please, if that risk goes well, like great for you. If it doesn't go well, like that accountability falls on you as a collector. So I think in a decentralized space, myself included, we all have to take a little bit more accountability for our own decisions, where I think we are used to yelling at customer service when things don't go too well for us. So I do think that shift in mindset is something that we're all going to kind of learn and curve together. But I try to set boundaries that way and just educate people and be like, hey, like, this is all super risky. Like this is a whole new asset class, and to speculate and make money on it. Like, yes, people have done it. We've seen the articles of people buying a Bored Ape for 0.08, I think it was when they minted, and sold it for like $500,000. So I get that can exist, but that takes a lot of luck, work, know-how, how to trade in markets in general to get there. So I try to level set with people as best I can.
Makes sense. So upcoming drop on Coinbase. What info you got on that for us?
Yeah, so that's next Friday, which is August 19th. It's at 3 p.m. Eastern, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. And it's 3 paintings that I did. It's called With What We Have, and they're all circular in shape. So they lean into the idea of the time that we've lived, the time that we're currently in, and then our future, and kind of balancing those 3 things together. The 3 paintings are each going to be an edition of 30. So it'll be 90 NFTs altogether, but there'll be additions. There could be 0.1 ETH per edition, so slightly more accessible in this space. And the goal behind them as I was painting them is I have generalized anxiety disorder. So my brain always lives in the future, and not like in the happy, like roses future, in the like the apocalypse future. So I try to often with my artwork work through that. Obviously I'm in therapy and things like that, and like, medical help with all of that because it is a disorder. But with my artwork, I try to bring myself back to the present because it's more active. So these pieces really require a lot of attention to make just because they do form a perfect circle and they have different elements to them. So it's just a reminder to, it's okay to live in the future sometimes, but not always. So this is kind of an homage to that.
With the anxiety piece, it's something that I've dealt with in the past as well. And it's kind of like an if ebbs and flows, depending on what's going on. Hearing you talk about it and just having I've been to therapy before. I've seen a lot of value in therapy. It was most helpful for me when I was going through some really serious health issues with my Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
So for me, and then to my question, for example, I also spend a lot of time thinking in the future. I think it's a blessing and a curse. I think it helps me be a good businessman because it's kind of like the chess moves and thinking about them.
Yep.
But then it also is like I'm stressing myself out about something that may never even happen.
Exactly.
Right?
That's exactly.
So what I have found, and talking with people and experiencing and just working on my own self-awareness, I found that there are 2 places or 2 activities that I can partake in that when I'm doing those activities, I never once think about the future or potential issues with the future. And so for me, that's out on a golf course playing golf, just me and the little white ball and trying to hit it straight. Yeah. And then basketball as well. When I'm playing basketball, I'm worried about, how do I make the right pass? How do I score? So those 2 sports are similar. I heard you talking about when you're painting, when you're creating, are you completely present? Like, don't hear any of the other noise? Is that kind of how it works for you? I'm curious.
Yeah, so art is definitely one of those things. I'd also say when I was younger, sports was also something like that.
Really?
I was not great at soccer, but playing soccer was great. Running has also been great. I've paused on running for the last few years because I ran not well. Like I ran a marathon and like didn't train for it properly. So my body was like, excuse you. But running and now walking really helped me focus on just like what I'm doing too.
Yep.
So art and I'd say physical activity both not only help with my anxiety, but yeah, also help keep me in the present, which has been really nice.
Vern, have you ever had that experience where like, you played, Amber and I are somewhere between average and below average athletes, based on what I'm hearing and what I've experienced with myself. You played, I like to think optimistically that I'm average, but I'm probably below. You played professional baseball. Like, the zone, it's such a cliche, but like, is that something you experienced? Was that in the batter's box, out in center field, or if at all?
Yeah.
Like hearing us talk, you kind of get that feeling?
I get it. And I get the thinking ahead of what's to come, and the stress that it puts on us, which we're not cognizant of it as we're going through it because we think we're planning, and we may set some expectations, and so many times our expectation leads to disappointments if we don't reach them. So you start to understand what managing expectations actually means, and in some cases, it's not having any. It's literally just going out and doing everything you can preparing for a moment. And then when that moment's there, you hope to execute what the work you put into it, and you leave everything up to just how it's going to play out. And in sports, and especially in baseball, Amber, for me, if I failed 7 out of 10 times, I was an all-star. In any other form of life, that you're getting fired. Like that's just the nature of the beast. Like you're failing a whole lot more than you're producing, and dealing with those 7 times, dealing with those 7.5 times, dealing with those 8 times, sometimes out of 10, it's taxing. Like it is a grind, because the expectation level, not only on yourself, but outside of that, especially when it comes to you're making a lot of money and you're not producing, you have to be able to manage that. And it's difficult at times. It hurts at times. And I've seen guys truly crumble, as professional athletes, grown men that crumble, and they typically end up going to outside forms of coping instead of actually sitting down and talking and getting help with people. Because unfortunately in society sometimes, and men, we think it's soft to open up and talk about things, which that's the only way you're really going to get to the root of what's going on, is if you're willing to just break down your barriers, break down the walls, and have some open and honest conversation with professionals. And I had conversations with a couple of, with one sports psychiatrist, and he's since passed, but his whole thing was just positivity. Like he's never stepped a foot in a box, doesn't know what it's like to hit a breaking ball, but it was nothing but positive. So that's kind of what I took from anything that I go through in life. There's always something there to find that's positive. Sometimes it's just hard for us to find it. So hopefully people listening, they see 3 different people from 3 different areas and 3 different backgrounds go through different struggles. That's kind of what I love about just being able to do this podcast, is we get to speak honestly and truthfully hopefully to people that we reach in different areas. We educate them in different areas, and hopefully draw them closer to who they are as a person.
That's incredible. I mean, I watch baseball. My husband knows a lot more about baseball than I do. But I watch and I enjoy, and same thing with like football. And I'm always in awe when I watch, because I'm like, you guys are the like 1% of the 1% in terms of like physical ability. And I always feel like when you hear stories about, professional athletes, struggling with their mental health or physical health or combination, because usually one can affect the other, I always feel awful. And the fact that you have a small window too, like this is what you love to do, and it's like your body only lets you do it for a certain amount of time. So I always think about that whenever I watch professional sports, because I'm just like, in awe because you're like, wow, your body moves in ways that like mine could not. But then also like dealing with that balance, I think, is something that's like on a bigger scale, because now you have thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people watching you while you're going through it. So I give you credit, because that's no small feat. But I like your note about positivity. I do something that I learned in therapy called thought stopping. When my thoughts skew negative, I'm like, nope, what are we going to look around us and be thankful for instead? And that usually helps. And I'd say it will eventually help neuroplasticity in my brain. We shall see. I still do a lot of thought stopping, but I think that's something that is really important. That's resonated with me as I've gone through therapy too. Is like, if you can train your mind to think about the positive things that are in your life, it will help. It will start to just become automatic, and your brain will kind of switch. So I hope that I think that was a really important takeaway that you said.
Appreciate it.
So I think this actually lends to an interesting topic. You know, we've just been talking about like your physical artwork, or even the even though it's digital, the physical composition of art, and then we're talking about like the body and how it moves. You know, another big part of what I've seen from you is like we're just using like words, right? Poetry and the meaning of words and how it collaborates with your art or sits alone. Like, talk to us about poetry and your personal experience with poetry and why it means a lot to you.
Yeah, so I've always written small like poems like in my sketchbooks for like at least the last few years, and I was always hesitant to share them because I didn't study writing. I studied art, and I mean, everyone learns writing in school, like thesis papers and things, but creative writing I was never trained in. So I always wrote these things for myself, and I would kind of put that into the titles of my earlier works. Like those were very thoughtful, and those expanded to poems. And for me, it's to be able to show my interpretation of my own work. I pair poetry with a fine art piece, because then I think it makes it a little easier for folks that aren't used to looking at abstract artwork to be like, oh, that's what she meant. That's interesting. And then they could pull their own takeaways out of my artwork that way. So it feels a little softer for people that, you know, haven't studied art. Abstract art could be really intimidating for a lot of folks because they'll be like, I could have made that. I'm confused. So I think that poetry, at least in my work, allows people to kind of start to see behind the curtain of what I was thinking. And I think the most beautiful thing about it is, especially on Twitter, people will read the poem, see the artwork, and then be like, I really love that was your conclusion. Mine was actually the opposite. And I like that conversation that it opens up with people.
Have you, when I see that, where my brain goes to is like, what makes the blockchain so exciting is like how technology can enable art or collectability or storytelling. Do you see, and you don't have to go into it if you don't want to, but like, I lend to think that there's probably some really cool, and I haven't thought of them yet, but like some really cool creative ways that the blockchain can basically take your poetry, take your art, and create either experiences or narratives using the back-end technology, the blockchain, to like blend them together or associate them in some way. Is that something you're interested in going down the path on, or do you want to keep those things separate, or do you want to keep the poetry just kind of where it sits now? Like, how do you look at that?
I definitely want to integrate it more heavily. I think people have asked me, why don't you do a collection of just your poetry? And I was like, that's an idea, but I think I want to wait for like technology to kind of catch up a little bit. I started to play with it in my most recent collection, Memories of a Masterpiece, where I started to storytell with some of the properties so people could kind of see like where I was and what my thought process was lightly through each of the traits. So like you said, I don't know what that's going to look like, but even just to be able to innovate around I don't want to use selling, but like, having your work available for someone to collect and all that metadata behind it. I think that will make artwork more robust for people to interpret, but then also feel a little bit easier for people that don't usually look at art, and to kind of be able to see all these different elements of storytelling and elements of the artist in the work itself and in the metadata, I think could be really cool. So yes, I would love to include that more. And then it could be something about physical in-person events, hopefully as the pandemic calms down. So I'm excited to see, like, especially in the next like 5-10 years, like what I could do more seamlessly with my work and all of that back-end data.
Okay. So abstract art. So since we're allowed to have our own interpretations of what we think abstract art is, as I go through Twitter, as I followed you, when I realized this lady's awesome. Here. Okay. So now I can look at this piece, and since we're talking about round objects, I like balls. I mean, talking baseballs, basketballs. I like playing with those things. I can see different things even in that piece. So I look at triangles, and in this piece, there's actually, I can see a baseball field. So in my simpleton brain, I can
simpleton. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for appeasing me. But there's actually an infield and an outfield, and I can see those things. Which now that I jump into when you release this, I'll be grabbing one of those because I love it. So just random as I went through your Twitter.
Funny that you say that because like this, you both are gonna roll your eyes at me. But when we do go see baseball games in person, my favorite thing is actually when they prep the bases and everything, and like they like clean the mound, and like that's all these beautiful shapes and patterns. I'm always like mesmerized by that. So that's interesting that you say that because as a visual person, when I do see a baseball game like that, is always my favorite part.
Well, my favorite part is that your favorite part of the baseball game is before the first inning gets going.
and then like halfway through, I'm like, Dave, it's hot. I'm tired. I want to go home. And he's like, why did we come?
That's funny. When I look at that same piece,
in Yankee Stadium, at least you get to do the YMCA, and they're cleaning the infield again, like in the 7th inning, I think. Is that when they do it?
They also do in the 7th inning, and then like in the Mets games too, they play that Italian song. I'm blanking. But anyway, I do like. I'll kind of sing the song, but like I like to pay because it's like a dance. Like it's just very beautiful. So that's interesting that you say that because that's definitely in my subconscious for sure.
What's funny too is like
she brought up a good point. She brought up a good point though. She notices the people that are actually doing the work and the art that allows hopefully a masterpiece to take place. Like I think those are the unsung heroes. Grounds crew, if people don't know, grounds crew, they start on the fields at like 11 a.m. And they are working up until game time at 7, and then however many after it takes them to clean up after that. So those are the artists. The people that play are just the kids that don't have to grow up. So I understand where your brain is.
Artists recognize artists. It's funny. So I'm looking at the same piece right now. I brought it up on my phone, and I now see the baseball diamond, like the field and everything.
I did too. It's awesome.
Which I didn't see at first glance. And then what's funny is like while we're sharing, I think it's a cool illustration of like abstract art. The first thing that hits me when I look at this exact piece is this little corner here with the red on the outside and then the red towards the middle and then the bottom red in the middle. I kind of get like a dartboard as like my first, just because of that red and then like the circle in the middle. And it's like, that's like the first thing I think of when I see this. And for whatever reason, amongst like all the colors here, that one triangle, that one like pizza slice almost, that has the 2 red stripes that are almost like dartboardy. That's like my first grab when I see it. So
pretty cool. That. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool to see. Like I feel like if you ask 50 different people to look at it, you might get 50 different answers, which is part of the fun.
That's the most exciting part, is to be able to pull from that. And like even when you both said triangles, I didn't think about it, but triangles are the strongest shape, I believe, architecturally. My middle school like shop class knowledge is still correct. So even like that idea of strength is something that like I tried to put in there, but did it subconsciously. So that's the nice thing about abstract art as an abstract artist, is sometimes I'll look back at works with other people and then relearn something about myself that I missed while I was making it, which is really nice.
For sure. Awesome. Amber, to kind of tie a bow on everything, you know, you've got more work coming up. Like you said, Coinbase drop coming up. You just took over, I think, the Instagram account. Like, what do you have coming up the rest of this year? What's your game plan to wrap out 2022?
I think I'm gonna chill. I mean, I say that. I always say that to Dave. Like, Dave, I need to take a break. And he's like, okay, I roll. So after Coinbase, I will probably do a few like one-of funds or two funds, like I like to call them, on Super Rare. And then I want to start compiling like a larger collection of editions to drop next year. Be on my same like editions contract, nothing new or different, but just to curate the work that I've made in the back half of this year, I think will be nice. So I kind of want to take a beat and curate those, and then hopefully we'll come out with something in January. The other thing, non-NFT wise, which I forget about because it's such a long lead time, is I have a book coming out with Andrews McNeil of my poetry and of my artwork, which is really exciting because it's always been a life goal of mine to
That's awesome.
write a book. So that comes out in January. So I'm excited for that too.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today. I knew a lot of this, but I wanted to share it with the world, and being close friends for the last decade, it's been awesome just seeing the success that you've had. So I really appreciate it. It was fun to chat, and this was fun.
This is awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Going Deep. To learn more about Vayner Sports Pass, please follow us on Twitter @VSPass. Also, don't forget to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.